It's 6:31. We're going to get started with our budget workshop. I shouldn't ask if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, we're going to get started with our budget workshop first.
Perfect. Good evening. Tonight we will present draft one of the 26-27 budget. Joanne and I have worked over the last couple of weeks. As you'll remember from last year, this is a little bit of a process. We start our last meeting with a very high level overview of where we are looking at the next school year. Tonight we will narrow in a little bit further. Joanne and Sarah have done a lot of analysis on our budget, where we're going, where we want to be. And then by next time, we should have it into an excellent position to look towards adoption in April. So tonight, as we go into this presentation, the final slides will look at areas that we need to continue to finalize. Each time when we bring you a draft one budget, there's a gap between expenditures and our anticipated revenues, and you'll see that again tonight. I will start right up front and say, I do not anticipate coming to you and asking for any reductions. The gap that we have and the areas that we still need to finalize and continue to refine will address the gap that you'll see this evening. So as we start this work, we always start with our 4 goals in mind. As we look at this budget will focus on continuing programs that we have in place, and it will look at student achievement and success, continuing the trends that we're beginning to see, particularly in ELA and math. We will continue to support the social, emotional well-being of all of our students. We will continue to push forward with our diversity, equity, and inclusion work while remaining fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. So the first slide that I have for you is this year to next year's expenditures. So the first number for you, it's a little over 14 million, is what we are anticipating our expenditures for our draft one budget here tonight. Like I said, you're going to see there remains a gap. However, this is where we are currently this evening. When we're working through this, at some point in time, we have to draw a line in the sand. Because as you're going through budgets, you continue to refine and continue to work and continue to work and continue to work. We get to a point where we say, okay, we've gone through this much, we've gone through these items really carefully. We're going to stop here, create the budget presentation, and then let you know what we have to continue to look at as we move forward. So tonight's draft one budget, the expenditures are a little over $14 million, and that allows us to do everything that we are doing today. Our adopted budget last year was close to $12 million. We're looking at about $1 million difference and an 8.38% increase from expenditures of our adopted budget last year and what we're proposing tonight for draft one. When we look at revenue from year to year, looking ahead to next year based on what we know, and keep in mind this can change and may change as they adopt the state budget, our revenues are at about 13.8 million. Last year, our revenues were at about 12.9 million, with a difference of about $902,000 or 6.96 increase. And what you'll see is our expenditures are going up more than our revenues year over year, and that's what this last piece looks at. What we'll present to you tonight leaves about $183,957 gap. So our expenditures are about 1.33% higher than our anticipated revenues. Now, I will remind you that voters vote on our expenditures, and then we as a district decide how we are going to fund those expenditures. We also know that we want to present and have a plan. We want a balanced budget, right? What we're planning to spend, we need to come with you with a way to fund it, and we are working through that process now. But our voters will be voting on the expenditures. So our budget is broken into 3 parts. Right now, as I go through this, benefits are broken out of the 3 parts. So we're going to talk about administrative, capital, and program. Thank you. I lost that word for a minute. So we're going to look at those 3 parts. The benefits for each of those parts will be presented separately tonight. When we get to our May meeting, the benefits are then divided and put into the 3 parts, but tonight you're going to see them in 4 separate sections. So I just share that with you. As we look ahead to May, those benefits will be broken out into each component, but tonight we'll leave them separate, and that is intentional. We do that each year. So when we start with our administrative component, the first thing I'll say is that these categories remain the same year over year. And then I would say over here what we're looking at for changes. So our Board of Education and our district clerk, we are leaving flat those budget lines. We're seeing a slight increase in the district meeting. Please remember that we are moving to a service this year. There are going to be higher levels of reporting that we have to do, and Albany County is no longer supporting elections. So we are incurring some additional costs in that area. The district meeting is our budget vote each year. Office of the Superintendent is going down by about 0.8%. Our business office sees about a 12% increase, and I would remind you that's because we brought on a district treasurer. And that is in anticipation for the changes in the office that will be happening over the next couple of years around personnel. We want to make sure that we're really well positioned for those changes. And Joanne and I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of years really trying to figure out what is the best level and most efficient, but also most functional way to staff the business office. And we believe that having a district treasurer is the way to go. So you do see a little bit of an increase there. But I would say with that increase comes a different level of expertise as well. Legal dues, BOCES, that is going down by, I apologize, it's 4.01%. It's going down by about $10,000. And then the last piece that we have is the supervision. And when you think about supervision, that's everything connected to the principal's office. So that is our principal, it's our secretary, it's support staff. Everything that's connected to the principal's office is all in that line as well, including some training. And that, I mean, is relatively flat. It's a 0.46% increase. Overall, this component of the budget is projected to go up by 2.81%. So when we look at this piece of the budget, what I will share with you is that we're not anticipating any significant changes for the Board of Ed. I shared with you where we have that slight change in voting procedures, and that's what that increase is looking at. Again, district clerk, no significant changes there. Our district meeting, we're going to collect that demographic data. We're now going to go through a service to do that. So that will be a slight increase there. And then we have our district treasurer. And those really account for any significant changes that you see in the administrative component. As we look at the capital component, think about bricks and mortar, that's our capital component, and the people associated with that. So salaries, that includes our 4 staff members in the O&M department. And that's going to go down by about 0.3%. That's really related to some change in transition and overtime and things like that. There's not significant changes in that. For equipment, we brought that down a little bit. Joanne just looks historically at what we spent. So that has gone down just a little bit from year to year. And I should share that first column is where we are proposing to be. The second column is where we were last year. Our contractual looks like it'll go down about 4%. Again, our contractual are the gentleman who comes and changes out all of our filters. It is our alarm company. It's all the contracts that we have related. Our O&M. You have the material supplies line in there. Our O&M department, there's a lot of material supplies. That's our toilet paper, paper towels, it's all of those things. Over the last couple of years, we have moved towards the BOCES bidding system to get a more competitive rate. So we continue to do that. Our electric and gas is up about 16.9%. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we went through a consortium to help control those costs. Still going up 16%, but we are in the best possible way to help control those costs. And then we have our serial bonds, and then this bond anticipation note is in here for you. And this is if we start the project a year sooner. If we begin construction in the summer of 2026, we will need to do some short-term borrowing, and that's what that money is there for. This, if we don't start the project, this just gets bumped out to the following year. So, but that is in there, so if we are in a position to start, we would want to start, and that money is set aside for short-term borrowing. The piece with that is, whenever you have the opportunity to start sooner, you watch them for escalation reasons, right? Like things aren't getting less expensive over time, they continue to get more expensive. So if we're able to leverage some of that, we want to, and this positions us to do so. When you look at the percent increase here, it's about 11.65% increase, and I'll say a lot of that is due to that bond anticipation book. Again, if we don't start, we don't spend that money. So we will hopefully be, first, the bond anticipation, no interest. We anticipate the capital project approved last summer or last May could begin earlier. We're waiting really on state ed approval. And then is it a good environment to bid? So there's no guarantees we'll start, but if we do, if we are able to and we're well positioned to, we want to be able to. Gas and electric, we're gonna still review numbers here. It continues to still fluctuate. We'll continue to work with them. We'll refine that a little bit more at our next budget workshop, but I believe that the numbers that we have now are pretty close to where we will be. And this does, you saw that O&M, the salaries didn't go up. It still provides for salary increases there. That flat essential rate there, it doesn't mean that they are not anticipating raises. It's just when it all works out in the wash, it still winds up being a little flatter than we had anticipated. And then the last and the third part is the program component, and then we'll look at benefits afterwards. All program salaries, we're looking at about a 5.43%. That's our instructional staff. It's everybody who works with kids. And that is contractual. Most of that is contractually related. So our association contract goes through June 30th of next year. So we knew what these numbers were going to be. We've known what these numbers were going to be for a while. Our equipment is down about 13.86%. Again, we look at trends. The equipment lines we have to be careful with. We can't increase them. Whatever the voters approve, that's what we have. So Joanne looks at those very carefully. And we feel pretty confident with the $88,000 equipment line. Contractual is up about 5.39% under program. And then our materials and supplies, we brought them down a little bit. We look at current trend, we look at current spending and where we've been with materials and supplies. When you look, Joanne has at least 5 years that we look back at. And that was an area that we felt comfortable bringing down a little bit. Teachers are going to have what they need to teach kids. And we just want to be realistic about what we actually need, right? We don't want to complete numbers where we don't need to. The next 3 are related to tuition, and these are our bigger ticket items. So tuition, regular education, are our high school tuitions. All the students that we pay tuition to go to the different high schools. Tuition, special education, that is outside placements. What you are going to see there is a pretty significant increase of 45%. Last year, we had about $500,000 in that line. This year, we're anticipating $911,000. The reason I stop and highlight this is our special education costs fluctuate and can fluctuate greatly from year to year. So when we approved our budget in May of last year, since then, we've had at least 4 students with pretty high needs move into our district that have required outside placements. Their needs are exceptional or their needs are specialized, that they require a specialized setting. That is why when we talk about fund balance and we talk about the 4% in particular, that we say we can see these swings. And this is a year where we saw those swings. Now, may some of those students move? Could additional students move in? Absolutely. And that's where we just have to watch that carefully because the placements are costly and they're highly specialized for kids who have highly specialized needs, right? They're really important things that we do for our residents. So that you're going to see an increase, but that is reflective of real data and real numbers. Tuition for charter schools is going to come down about $62,000. We send to a couple of charter schools, Troy, KIPP, once in a while a Henry Johnson kid, right?
Green Tech.
And Green Tech. The high schools, kids pick a high school anyway, right? Like that is what it comes down to. But we do have some families that choose charters for elementary and middle school. Many times when families move here, if their kid was in a charter school, they often leave their child in a charter school. They don't have to change their program or their schools, they don't. Textbooks, we provide textbooks to our students in private schools. It's up just a tiny bit. BOCES instructional services, you're going to see about a 31% increase there. It's the actual services that we're using. So we get a lot of services through BOCES. It's one of the ways that, for example, that we fund tangible developments. And when we can leverage BOCES, we want to, because we get aid back in the next year. So even though we're spending money, we get aid back through the next year, we're better off spending it through BOCES than a different agency where you're not going to get aid back. Our clubs and our athletics remain, the increase there is contractual. The stipend goes up in our contract in order to be able to offer the same numbers of clubs and supervisors. That has to increase based on what the contract increase. These 2 numbers allow us to offer exactly what we're offering this year as far as number of clubs go. And then pupil transportation is up about 0.4%. Again, transportation varies, and it's an expense-based aid, so what we spend is what we get aid back on. And transportation can vary. The actual cost of the runs, right, continues to increase, and it'll be CPI or 2%, whichever is greater. However, it's the number of runs that we have. And a lot of times the number of runs that we have is dependent upon where kids are living. So when students come to us and are unhoused, when they move into permanent housing, we are still responsible for transporting those students here if they want to remain with us for the rest of the year. That is in legislation, and it is meant to provide stability to families and kids. So in doing so, there's some years that we have a few runs, or maybe kids kind of live in the same area, right? We can put them on the same bus. And then there's times, sometimes kids go to Troy, sometimes they're in Albany, sometimes they're in different places, so it just really depends. This year, we're anticipating that it'll stay pretty flat, based on what we know. So we have gone through, we've done analysis of tuition. So Joanne gets bills, for example, North Colony's mid-year bill comes in. So we're able to have a really good handle mid-year who's at North Colony, right? Who's there, what year they're in, and then we can do some projections. How many kids are graduating? How many kids are we sending up? And we do that across different schools. The BOCES final commitment form was released. We will continue to review that and determine services that we need to look ahead to for next year. And we'll have a better sense of what those expenditures are looking ahead. The BOCES commitment form came out a little bit later than typical. So we will continue to look at that. But in this budget, you're going to see a straight 4% increase is what we budgeted for. We put that increase in there. I don't know if that'll be the number yet. We'll continue to look at that. We will continue to look at transportation needs moving into 26, 27. We'll look at where are we sending kids, how many routes do we need. So we'll continue to look at that. And then we'll continue to review enrollment and program needs. So for instance, this school year, we have one section of 5th grade. That one section of 5th grade will move into the middle school, which if we have a larger kindergarten class come in, which we have for the last, I would say, 7 or 8 years or so, we will now again need 2 teachers at every grade level. So we may need to look at adding, and this budget accounts for adding in an additional teacher back into our elementary program. But we will continue to review programs. We look at caseloads. Last year I asked you to increase ENL by 0.5. So Mrs. Stack, she's our half-time ENL teacher, half-time teaching assistant. We will look at programs. We'll look at your ENL needs and see what our need is there. We'll look at academic intervention services. We'll continue to review all of those, and then we'll determine what need is, and then that's how we staff. This budget does not look at reductions of staff members. Just to be clear, we may shift roles and responsibilities, but we're not looking at a reduction of any staff members. This budget actually anticipates an addition of a classroom teacher for elementary, which brings us to staffing. So currently, our Manans Association of Teachers is at 44, and that may go down by a 0.5 position, and that is because we have a teacher considering retirement that doesn't completely want to retire and may come back and work half-time for us. So that continues to unfold. That is the reduction that we are potentially looking at there, is that teacher coming back in a part-time capacity. So we'll continue to monitor that. Instructional support staff, we are looking at going from 10 to 11 aides. Mrs. Kozlowski is recommending some slight adjustments to how we staff some of our self-contained rooms. Our little guys are really busy. So we currently have 2 aides in our classrooms. We're looking at having 3 with a slight adjustment to the ratio. We can add 1 student, but then we also can add an additional person in the classroom. We are looking at remaining status quo in my office and the business office, program administration and support staff, and then operations and maintenance. As I shared with you, this budget anticipates our staffing levels remaining the same from this year into next year. Now, this is the piece that I will share with you, Will, when we get to our May budget workshop. This slide will no longer exist. What Joanne will do is she will take these pieces and parts and assign them to the administrator of the program or the capital component. So she'll look at state retirement, she'll look at teachers' retirement, and she'll break these out to each component, and the component will absorb the benefits associated with that component. But we do like to look at benefits separate and apart and look at them in totality as we're planning. So our state retirement, ERS is looking at a big increase this year. It's going up about 27%. We've also added aides in that area. Our instructional aides fall under ERS. We're teaching assistants fall under TRS, so we have some increases there. Teachers' retirement, we're actually seeing a decrease. Social Security is a slight increase. Our workman's comp is a slight increase. When you look at the percent, it looks really big, but it's $900. Just to kind of put that in perspective for you. Unemployment insurance, we're looking at remaining the same. In this presentation, we have our hospital and medical benefits remaining flat. And the reason for that is we are looking at different options for health insurance. We've been meeting with our health insurance committee, and we're looking at some different options to help manage costs for health insurance, which I'll speak about a little bit more. Our cafeteria intrafund, we're keeping that the same, and then our federal funds, we're remaining that the same. So we're looking at a total of a 0.7% increase, but keep in mind, what we spent on health insurance is what we have in this budget, and I'll explain a little bit more in just a moment. So as I was saying, we continue to meet with our health insurance committee. We just met again last week. We are looking at some measures to provide equitable health coverage for our employees, but also looking at ways to manage costs. And one of the things that we've been doing are looking at different consortiums and different trusts. CDPHP, which is the product that we currently have, is looking at close to an 18% increase from this year into next year. Those numbers, just quite frankly, are really difficult to manage. We are community rated, which essentially is like going out on the marketplace, being a small district on our own, and our health insurance costs are continuing to rise. Not only for the district, but it's also they're rising for our employees too. So we have been working with the health insurance committee to look at different options and find ways to help manage the costs while also providing excellent benefits to those that work for us. So what I will share with you is while we left that flat, we didn't want to put the 18% increase in there because that's not where we want to be. We do have some real viable options that we continue to look at, and those options would go into place potentially for July 1. So as we come back for draft 2, we should have a much better sense of where we land with our health insurance costs. Our TRS contributions are down, but ERS, as I shared with you, are up. Not only are the percent increases larger, but we have more non-instructional staff than we've had, and that's a function of our self-contained programs. Right, our instructional aides, before adding our additional programs, we think we had a total of 4 aides in the whole building. Now we're looking at 11, so our ERS contributions are going to continue to rise. So while our voters vote on the expenditures, we want to talk a little bit about how we plan to fund the increases that we're looking at. So school districts don't have a lot of options for revenue. We have taxes, a few other small ways, and then we have state aid. And that's really what we have broken out for you here today. And these numbers are very similar to what I had shared with you when we talked about state aid at the last board meeting. We are looking at a change of 2.01% in our increase in our tax. Our pilots are increasing a little bit, about 17%. That's due to Regeneron. We have some interest earnings. If you look at our interest earnings are at 44%. They're going from 76,000 to 110. Interest has served us well. Commissions, they're always very small. It's like juvenile fees, things like that. Refund from the prior year, that comes through as BOCES. We leave that flat from year to year. That does not change a whole lot. Tuitions from other schools. This is our Riverside program. This is a place where we get to the slides later that we will look at a little bit more closely as we go through the annual review process, as we look at who's returning. We'll continue to look at those tuitions. We have some small donations and gifts. State aid and BOCES, I have another slide that will break that down for you again, but we are looking at an increase in state aid and BOCES aid. Medicaid is going to remain flat, and then we have our debt service transfer. And then we always talk about at the bottom our fund balance. This is unassigned fund balance. What we are recommending this year is that we go from 900,000 for 1 year up to 1.1 million. And the reason for that is the short-term borrowing that we're looking at to get the capital project up and running. We are recommending that the board consider using fund balance in order to do that. Joanne continues to do a very close review of our fund balance, and we feel confident that our fund balance will remain pretty flat, even if we use the 200,000 to balance the budget. that budget gap of the short-term borrowing. Can you go back one time? Sorry. So where that lands us, our revenues are up, as we shared on that first slide, about 6.96%. Thank you. State aid remains the same as the last time I presented. The piece that I will share with you is that if you were to go pull our state aid run numbers from the website, the place where you're going to see a difference is the building aid column, this bottom one. That's at $582,000. That's inflated by about $180,000 on here, and that's because we closed out our capital project. We closed out that 23 capital project at the end of the year. The final cost report is due by December 31st. You submit it at the end of the year. By the time they process it, building aid run numbers are already out. So in a couple of weeks, when the new aid run numbers come through and those projects come through, we will see this increase come through as well. So just when you're looking, if you were to pull, or a community member to ask you, why is our building aid higher? That is what it is. It's just the way that the systems cross. They just haven't caught up with each other yet, and they haven't put out new numbers. The bottom part that I will add for you as well is going to be full day pre-K funding. So it says full day K, I apologize, it's pre-K. So what the governor is proposing is an increase of about $4,500 per student. We get a little over right around $6,000 per student right now. They're looking at an increase of about $10,000 to about $10,000 a student. The reason I share that, and we'll talk about that in a moment on another slide, is the general fund right now absorbs a good amount of money for us to run our own pre-K program, which we felt was important to do instead of using an outside provider. This funding will allow the program itself to be better covered by the grant funding versus what it is covered as today. The only thing that I would add is transportation aid. Well, actually, BOCES and high cost and transportation aid are all in bold. They are expense-driven funds. What we spend depends what we get aid on. Transportation aid, we still have to close out, right? So there could be some slight adjustments in transportation aid because it all just depends on, this is a projection of what we believe we'll spend. When it all comes down to what we actually spend, that's what we'll get aided on. So there could be some adjustments in that area. As I was talking about before, pre-K funding, we're looking at some changes as we go into next school year. And this slide outlines for you what those changes would look like. This is what we have in our current year and how we fund. And this is what we would propose if it goes up to 180,000. And that is up there for you to take a look at so we can see the differences in what we'll be able to do. Because right now, the difference between these are absorbed in our general fund. So when I tell you that we have about $180,000 gap, one of the ways we anticipate closing this gap is through the additional funding through pre-K. So our current funding supports the salaries for our teacher and our teaching assistant that's in there at about 10% of their benefits. And then from the administrative component, we have a little bit of what we would call a stipend in there, right? And I would say it certainly does not cover the administrative time that goes into our pre-K program, but that's how we break it out for right now. So increasing the funding would allow us to potentially increase enrollment. We have 18 kids in pre-K. We can increase if you add an additional aid to the classroom, which we have not done because add a couple of kids, you have to add a whole other person with benefits. This funding could allow us to do that. And then these figures right here are looking at 18 kids, right? We could potentially look at more kids than that with an additional aid, but right now we left it with the 18 students that you kind of start with. So the instructional salary, that jump is the addition of an aid. So we could increase enrollment if we needed to. Our non-instructional salaries, FICA and Medicare, and it breaks it down for you so that you wind up with these two totals. Right now, we're at about 97,000, but we're spending about 120. And then how we would look at closing that and pushing all of the benefits, some more of the administrative salary into this grant so that we would have a much better picture of an actual funded pre-K program through a grant versus, I mean, right now it's a partially funded pre-K. And then, oh, go ahead. just in that last one, right now today, we're absorbing about $23,000 in our general fund. With the addition of this and really kind of right sizing some of the percentages, we would look at about absorbing $266 in total. Tax cap. I had shared with you the tax cap is going to be right around 2%, right? It was 1.94, right around 2%. We are going to trend right at 2.01%. And that 0.07% was really about how the short-term borrowing was going to be calculated in, and whether we were going to use some of our interest and earnings to offset that. And when we use interest and earnings to offset that, which we should, right? If we have the money to fund it, we should be doing that. It does bring it up to right at 2.01% is what we're looking at for a tax cap increase for this proposed budget here. We have the tax cap for you for the last couple of years. You know, last year we went out at 4.1%. I do believe that this is the year that we stay at or below the cap, right? At 2.01. Before that, we we're at 0.2, 2.2, and 2.9. Our tax cap remains pretty steady, the calculations. Sometimes it jumps up a little, sometimes it comes down. I remind you this 0.2 is when the pilots came on. So we didn't really necessarily lose tax revenue, but it just came through in pilots instead of the increase. But this year we are looking at a 2.01% increase. And the yellow that we have for you, those are our pilots. You're going to see the pilots as Regeneron comes on more and more, those pilots are going to increase. It also includes I always want to call it its own name. What is the, what's the other rather large pilot we have, Joanne? NHS?
We have Castleman Electric, Regeneron, and Soldier
Perfect.
Veterans Housing.
So those account for all three pilots there for you as well. Any questions on the tax cap calculation and why the change? I certainly can come back to it as well, but I just want to know that is a change from where we thought we might be and where we landed. So as we look ahead, areas that we're going to continue to review and refine, the first one is BOCES expenditures. Now that that report is out that we need to submit for our costs looking at BOCES for next year, we will input those numbers. Once we tell them what services we want, we have a really good sense of what that cost looks like. So we will work on our BOCES expenditures, get them inputted into the system, and we will have a much more solid and clear number for the board in the area of BOCES. The piece that I will say to you is when we see reductions in BOCES spending, remember the following year, you're going to see a reduction in aid, which makes sense, right? If you don't spend money, you're not going to get aid on it. So an example that I'll give you is that we had, when we spend some money on coaching, right? Or we have certain services and then we decide not to use them anymore, we don't have the expense, but then you also won't have aid in the following year on that expense. We will continue to review out-of-district special education placements. We'll continue to look at who we have, where they're going, as Mrs. Kozlowski goes through the annual review process. So as the annual review process plays out, we'll have a better sense of where we're going to need special education placements. Mrs. Kozlowski has a pretty good sense of where we are now, right? But what you need to go to the table. We need to have conversations with the out-of-district placements and see what their recommendations are. We will continue, oh, and I apologize, and we need to review for additional placements, right? We always want to account for if we have students moving in. Do we know of any families that are going to be returning to district? Do we know of any families that are here that may need a more specialized placement? So we'll look at if there's a need for any additional placements as well. We'll continue to look at health insurance costs. As I shared, we kept those costs flat right now. We continue to look at different options, but as we come back for draft 2, we should have a much better sense of where we are going to be. And then we will do a final review of tuitions paid to public schools, both regular ed and special ed. So I would just remind you that, for example, our high schoolers, any high schoolers, we pay their general education tuitions, and then if they require any specialized services, we pay that on in addition. So we will continue to review those as well. When kids go to high school, we don't have a good sense sometimes of what their special education needs may or may not be, particularly if they move in, because we are not the person that holds their IEP or their special education meetings anymore. We rely on, they hold the meetings at the high school, and then we get that information afterwards. So we'll continue to look at those and track that. We will do a review of our Riverside programs. When I say we, I mean Mrs. Kozlowski. So she will look at current enrollment. She'll look at what kids are moving up in classrooms? Are they staying in classrooms? Then she'll have a conversation with our neighbors and talk about which, how many open slots does she have when it's all said and done. So she'll continue to work through that and take a look at those numbers. And a lot of that depends on preschool. So Mrs. Kozlowski is out right now visiting our preschoolers. She's going out, she's seeing them and trying to make some determinations of students who can come join us here at Manans School. And if students have needs that are beyond what we are able to provide here, and if they need different let us know. We will continue to review technology and furniture needs. We have a replacement plan. We want to continue to chip away at our replacement plan, whether it be Chromebooks, smart boards, or teacher laptops. Those are some of the things that we look at when we continue to cycle through. And then we also look at furniture needs. So last year we did quite a large update in the art room. The furniture in there needed a redo and some of the storage. So we'll continue to look at those needs and we'll continue to update and replace as needed, and we have funds set aside for that. Our curricular instructional needs, we have brought on some new curriculums, and those curriculums come with consumable prices. There are pieces that need to be replaced each year, whether it's workbooks or books. So we will continue to fund the replacements that are needed. Mrs. Moran continues to look at our fund balance projections. She's looking at where are we now, right? Where are we now for our spending? Where does it look like we're going to be in June? What does that mean for our fund balance, right? Because that's really, we got to look at our spending, and our fund balance is essentially what's left over at the end of the year. What remains unspent? And then we'll continue to monitor state aid. The big number that we continue to look at and we're going to watch closely this year is pre-K. I don't anticipate large shifts in any of our other aid areas. What we continue to really watch is the pre-K number and see if the increase in fact comes to light at the end of the budget process. Our next budget workshop is scheduled for March 30th, and we anticipate when we come back on March 30th that we will be really close to a budget that we will hopefully look towards adopting in April. So questions, discussions?
Questions on the budget?
So transportation cost, does it change with the cost of, fuel? The fuel prices go up, does that change anything?
No. So our contracts for next year will come in at CPI or 2% regardless of fuel.
Okay. So say the prices go up.
Absolutely.
I have March 23rd.
So we originally had March
Did we move it?
23rd, and we pushed it to March 30th to give us a little bit more
Okay.
time. Okay. And the idea was that we're going to get closer to the budget adoption, but also that the 2-week turnaround to finalize some of these numbers, if we push it out a little further, we do wind up in a little bit of a better spot.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else have a conflict? I don't have a conflict, but does anyone have a conflict, or is that fine?
No.
Okay.
No, that should be good.
I'd just say, like, for me, a very thorough presentation, covered all the stuff. There's only two things that jumped out at me. Like maybe it's because I see so many like huge numbers all the time, like $900, all that stuff. But the two things that are important to me is the special education increase, which obviously we see that this is a year where it almost doubled, and that's just something that it is what it is, But the other one I was just interested in, and you had it as a bullet point, was the BOCES instructional services. Do we think that we're using them that much more? So like whatever we put as our budget, it's just like we're flying past it right now. So we're now more in line with what we're actually using it as.
A little bit of the BOCES change. As you remember earlier this year, we did some large budget transfers because we realigned the expenditures where they should be. My goal for the next meeting is, so some of those increases are due to that shift.
Yeah.
My goal in the next meeting is to break down the BOCES bill a little bit differently for all of you, for all of us, next time we meet, is to show you exactly what budget code and what does it cover. BOCES we use them for a lot of things. I want to make sure that we account for them in the correct places. The other comment I would make about tuitions, again, when we have historically budgeted for our high school tuitions, we get that bill. we can now break it out. We break it out, so we take a regular for any child that has an IEP in high school, I take their regular cost of education along with what they get for their related services, and I have moved some of that code of that expense over to special education codes. It's important for the district that we record things in the correct code. We have an obligation to meet a maintenance of effort in our special education costs. The state looks at the grant money they get, or they give us, and they want to see how much have you spent? Are you actually spending as much money to support your program as we're giving you or more than? So we have taken very cautious approach to making sure that we budget in the correct categories. That's why some of that increase is there, Charlie, in the special ed, and that's why some of that increase is in that BOCES code. But we will be breaking that out in a lot more detail in the next meeting as well.
Cool.
Is that part of the reason the tuition for regular education was not, I mean, that was a pretty small increase for regular
Correct.
education,
That's why.
because some of it, yeah.
And it's really important,
Special ed.
again, that we record those expenses where they should be.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, then we'll move into our regular meeting. Call the meeting to order. Could I get a motion to enter public session?
I'll make a motion to enter public session.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're in public session. Could I get roll call, please?
Ms. Jessica?
Here.
Ms. Booth?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Ramon?
We have a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Comments from the public on agenda items. A reminder for members of the public in attendance, this is one of 2 opportunities afforded to members of the public to comment on or inquire about agenda items. Members of the public will also have an opportunity at the end of the evening's agenda to comment on matters not formally noted on the agenda. Does anybody in person have anything? Anybody online? Okay, if anybody ever wants to email comments, you can send them to boecomments@manans.org. Item F, approval of the minutes. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District accept the minutes of the February 9th, 2026 regular meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, discussion items, superintendent's reports and updates.
So this evening, Mrs. Wiley has a presentation for you. It is a continuation of the presentation from January. This year, we made the decision to break out our state assessment report into 2 parts. One being around proficiency and how our students are performing overall, and the second being a closer look at our subgroups and really taking a look at that through the lens of equity. So Mrs. Wiley has prepared this presentation for you this evening. She'll look at ELA and math. And then for our accelerated courses, we will look at participation. And we will only look at participation because our numbers are small. When we start to look at subgroups a little bit more in depth, it starts to reveal potentially students. So that will look at that through participation was. Thank you, Mrs. Wiley.
So I'll start with ELA. When we last talked, we kind of gave a big overview of how the district is doing. We went grade by grade, compared this year and last year with in-grade bands. And what we walked away with in terms of ELA is that last spring, our overall proficiency for ELA was 64%, which is pretty good, which was an improvement from the year before. And, we saw some gains. The purpose of this presentation is to kind of peel back those layers and see where are we gaining, who's not, and really try to, unpack some of the, where's that growth coming from and where do we need to keep working? So that will be our goal here tonight. So just a quick overview of our successes in ELA is that we are seeing some achievement gaps close, especially with our Black students in our ELLs or our ENL students. They're showing a pretty high significant acceleration. So you'll see that in the data. Our challenge remains students with disabilities. they remain flat, and we will talk a little bit about that as the presentation goes on. And then, our trend is that we have this, when we look at it K-8, we see this growth that's really driving that 64% is happening in the 3 to 5 range. And then we have this 6-8 dip. So that's something that we'll talk a little bit about with the middle school and how we bridge that 5 to 6. That's a big year. That's a big growth year and change for, all of you that have middle schoolers, that it's a big shift. So we've got to begin to think, wrap our brain around that a little bit. We'll talk more about that. So when we're just looking at our, this is just an equity spectrum. So these are our demographics that we're going to analyze. And you'll see the district average right here and who is performing above and below. So we go to, this is non-economically disadvantaged as opposed to our economically disadvantaged. So you're going to see some gaps there. Our white female, oopsie, sorry Trish, males, our L's, you'll see we're still below that district average, but you'll see quite a bit of growth in that area. And our Black students still below the average, but some growth there.
What's SWD?
Students with disabilities, sorry, yeah. So here we're going to see some growth here, right? So here's our last year, or 2023, our Black students were at 27%, and we are up to 45%. So we have, over the 2-year span, have really made some growth in that area. Pretty stable, but high, high performing up here, Asian and white, pretty stable, little bit of fluctuation, but not much. That can be a couple of students. So that's where we're at with these are kind of like our growth areas, our highlights. Our L's more than doubled from 2023 to today. So we were at 24% proficiency in ELA, and now we're at 53% proficiency in ELA. And our economically disadvantaged have some growth, 34% to 47%. That gap is narrowing. So some things we are doing in the ELA area, and I would, attribute a lot of that to, we've done a lot of work in the school around literacy and around our ELA curriculum, and the teachers have really worked hard to involve curriculum and resources that look like our kids and celebrate our kids and read books about people that are like our kids and like our families. So I think that's part of it. And I also think just becoming more aware, culturally aware of what kids need in the classroom has made a difference as well. So when we look at even though our economically disadvantaged has made a stride from 2 years ago, the gap between economically disadvantaged and not is huge. So we still have a lot of work to do in that area. I think we're going to have to, sit as a team and dig a little bit deeper and spend some time around poverty and what it does for, poor and with a learner and how we support that. These students come with very unique situations, and we need to be able to really tailor our instruction for them. So we'll have to really work in that area. So even though we have growth, we have a huge gap there. And then this is really our urgent. This is where we're urgently in need of some work. We are almost 40 points away from the district average with our special ed population. That has not changed. We are the same in 2023 as we are 2025. So that's an area that we have to think about, and right away. It's urgent, it's needed. The data is telling us that this is our area. I'll share some ideas as we move forward that we can implement pretty quickly in order to begin to address this. So when we look over the 3-year performance, we can just see the changes here. L's, Black and economically disadvantaged, growing. White and Asian, slight dip, but still high performing, and our students with disabilities absolutely stagnant, where we will put a lot of our energy and time. So this is just kind of a graphic, an equity graphic that just kind of shows us where everyone is at. So up here is our high proficiency, right? So these are our high performers in both years. We have Asian were 87, 77, white 74 and 71. And then it just kind of, this area is where we need to begin to see some growth, but we need to still work towards. So we have our L's, huge improvement. We're going to still, there's a big surge here. So that's good. We have to keep doing what we're doing. Still not at district average though. Still not at that 64%, but definitely growing. Our Black students, significant growth, but still have to get to that. We're not at that district average. So we want to keep working on that. And then, we have our special ed population down here with 0% change. That's our urgent priority. One of the things we'll see is this level 2 students, and we talked about this in the prior conversation about data, is that we moved a lot of kids from 1s to 2s. Now we need to begin to move them. You got to go 1s to 2s, right, to get to 2s to 3s. So like we're going in the right direction, but even a lot of our students with disabilities are landing in that 2 zone. So we're getting there. We've got to find, what next? How do we push them from here to there to get them proficient? And then also over here is just, thinking about our middle school scaffolds. That's got to be our next push as well. What does literacy look like in the middle school, and how do we transfer the skills that they're learning in the elementary school into the middle school and continue to improve that? And this is where you'll see that difference, right? So in the elementary school, in ELA, we're seeing 61% proficiency. And in the middle school, we're seeing 42. So that's that gap that we have to think about what is happening in 5th grade into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that is causing that dip. So that's something we will look to tackle. So here's our strategic priorities and what we need to think about. Students with disabilities this is our widest and most stagnant group. We need to come up with interventions and do that immediately. And as a group, we need to sit and really think about what that looks like. There are a couple ideas we've been thinking about what our core curriculum looks like with our students with disabilities. And this year we spent some time working on some scaffolds for those students. The ARC core curriculum came in and it was like, let's do this curriculum. We implemented it and we had to go because you don't know what you don't know, and it's hard to scaffold when you don't know the curriculum. We know the curriculum now. So what I think is happening is our staff is really able to anticipate needs. And this year we were able to get to some scaffolds because teachers knew what they were teaching now. It was really hard last year to not know. And also, we're spending some time thinking about when we go into classrooms and when teachers are thinking, we're going to push ourselves to think about who's doing the work in the classrooms. Is it, are teachers doing the work? Are the kids doing the work? Or we're thinking about the kids doing the work. Are students with disabilities asked to do the work? Or are they over scaffolded for? So we're going to think about some of those things when we begin to go into classrooms. We want them to be asked. We want all of our kids to be asked high level questions. We want them to be challenged and be part of the discussion and not just, you answer the yes or no questions because you're, and I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just saying that's the thing we have to think about is what is their role in the classroom? So when we look at this data, that's something we have to think about in our classrooms, and we'll ask the teachers to also do kind of like an audit. When you're asking questions of kids, what type of questions are you asking different kids? What are you asking? What are you expecting? Or is it the same high level of work for all of our students? Just kind of a quick, not saying it's not like that, we're just going to do that equity check. Middle school scaffolds, we really need to think about what our middle school literacy program looks like. And is it the same rigor that we're getting right now in the lower grades? So we'll have to see, do some audit work around that. And then targeting those level 2 students, seeing how we can get those level 2 students from level 2 to level 3 at this point. Now we're going to talk a little bit about math. So math, we will also compare 23 to 25 and look at our overall scores. And I think, go ahead, Trish, I think the next one. So we were around 62% in our overall score for math. So that is our 2025 snapshot is about 62%. Our analysis shows that it's stable. We didn't really gain much, we didn't lose much from 2023. So we're not making any gains, we're kind of just hanging out in that area. Gender gaps are basically none. When we look at our data, even in ELA, gender gaps really don't exist They're like a point or two either way. Go ahead, Trish. So overall averages are around 60%, but racial gaps are prevalent. The data shows a real stark drop off when we look at our racial data. So Asian, white, and then Black we have this drop off when it comes to math. We don't see this when it comes to ELA as much. We're seeing a lot of growth in ELA, and in math, we're not seeing the same amount of growth with our demographics. I don't think curriculums are the answers to all of our problems. I don't want to say that. We did just implement a new curriculum, and we are having some coaching coming in, and I think this data will be really important to look at as we implement this curriculum and see where are our subgroups, how are they performing within this curriculum and in the classroom, and what other supports do we need to put in place. So again, our economically disadvantaged versus not, pretty significant gap here. We have about a 20-something% gap in that as well. So another area that we will need to dig into for mathematics. It continues to be a barrier, and it's something that we will have to look into, spend some time thinking about those students as well when we look at our program. And then again, our students with disabilities are a 40% gap from the district average. So that is, again, we're going to have to really spend time thinking about what these students need that might be different above and beyond. This is not something that we can, we talk about remediation. You can't remediate a 40-point gap. You've got to accelerate. We've got to look at tier 1 instruction as well as tier 2 and tier 3. So we have to see, it's got to be across the whole day of a student in order for us to make gains here. It's not about, what small group am I going to put a kid in? That might be part of it, but we also need a lot of really great instruction in the tier 1 level with supports coming into the tier 1 level as well. Because what happens if we just remediate, they'll just be, Jen likes to call it chasing the standards. They'll just be eternally behind. So we need to remediate, and we need to give grade level standards, and we need to figure out how we teach those within the grade level standards so that they can be successful. We just pull them out and teach them, something that's 3 grades lower. They're going to constantly be behind, and we won't make up that gap, and the students won't be learning at the rate that we need them to be ready for high school. Again, gender, not a factor. Our students are, pretty even, males and females in mathematics. So just a graphic just to kind of see the overall picture. Again, one thing to highlight, mathematics for ENL grew quite a bit. So we have a 17-point percentage increase in math for our ENL population. We have some small growth here, right? So we have, our Black students grew just a tiny bit, but again, that's a couple students, right? So it's not really significant growth. Our students with disabilities have declined. So we have to, as I said, I can't say urgent enough. It is an urgent need that we need to really think about and address. And I think we have the right team and mindset to do that. We just have to kind of put that in front of our brains as we're planning and thinking and implementing ideas and strategies. Can you go back just one quick? So just a couple of things to focus on. Identifying economic and disability status remains the strongest predictors of success in mathematics here at NANS. So that's right now, unfortunately, a predictor of success here. We have to work to undo that. That's our job. We have to shift. This is what I was just talking about. It has to be a systemic acceleration. We can't remediate it. Only we've got to accelerate. We've got to figure out a way to put it into tier 1 as well as tier 2 and tier 3. So these students are finding support in all levels. And then instructional support focusing on grades 5 to 6. Same thing. You need that. There's this gap in the middle school again. So we go from 5th grade to 6th grade, and there's just a little bit of a dip. So again, this is just a little bit of a repeat, but we really need to move from, just understanding gaps, small changes, maintaining averages. We can't live here. We need to move into this area where we are accelerating strategically, and we are having this systemic action where it is a movement. It's not, we can't piecemeal it. We've got to really look at our whole program offerings and see what we can do to support these students. And then looking at our subgroups, we can't just look at subgroup data today. Subgroup data has got to become part of our conversation as we meet in PLCs, as we have conversations with staff, and as teachers sit and talk together. We've got to have conversations about these subgroups. We can't wait until we get a number like 40 points gap and say, oh no, this has got to be in front of our brain right now and tomorrow and the next day. So a couple things that we should work to do. For ELA, we should work to really target our resources. And when I say resources, I mean our time, our energy, our personnel, our planning, our resources around what this data is telling us with regards to students with disabilities. So our students are at a 39-point gap, and a lot of them are testing at the 1 and 2, and a lot of them are moving to the 2. So we've got to work to move them forward. So we've got to optimize resource allocation, move those students towards proficiency, beyond just baseline support, focusing on structured interventions that elevate them to proficiency. So that is going to involve all the staff. Students with disabilities can't be just the responsibility of the special ed teacher. They are the responsibility of all of us. So we have to kind of pull together as a team and find those systems that will support them and begin to close that gap. Our other ELA focus is those bubble students and the middle school. So, as I said, moving those level 2 to 3, figuring out we have Tableau, which is a resource that we get from BOCES that will really allow us to drill down into what types of questions kids are actually not getting right. And we're not trying to teach the test, that's not what I'm saying, but it'll say, these students are missing this question because of vocab misunderstanding. These students are struggling with comprehension. These students, so it'll really allow us to gather that data to say this subgroup of kids could use this in class, and we can support them with that. And then economic status continues to be a determining factor. We have a high number of them are performing at a level 2 though. So we need to think about that bubble using that data. And then for math, we need to, again, that systemic acceleration for our students with disabilities and Black subgroups. Our snapshot shows that these are both 2 groups that are in need of our immediate attention. Overall, our performance is stable, but when we dig down, we see that there's something structurally not there for those groups. So our mandate is that we can't plug along. We've got to begin to really push forward. We have to move beyond incremental small changes and look for ways to deliver culturally responsive, culturally sustaining instruction. A lot of that is around students who we've just read. What was the book we read? Remind me. Culturally responsive teaching the brain. And one of the strategies we talked about is students who struggle. Sometimes we tend to over support. They begin to kind of show signs of struggle, and we say it starts with a T, and then they basically just have to say time. Yeah, that's it. You're great. Good. Okay, next question, right? So sometimes we care about our students so much, and we don't want to see them struggle, that we over support. And we really got to look at our students who are struggling. We've got to build scaffolds for them to be able to do the rigorous and high level thinking. And the other thing is a really powerful strategy with students is, especially students with in poverty and students that might be missing some vocabulary and literacy knowledge, is the idea of metacognition. Students thinking about how they think, because then they can think like that again, right? When you just argue right or wrong, you're not thinking about why you're right and wrong and why your thoughts are making sense. You're just saying an answer, and you're right because the teacher said you're right. But we got to teach our students about why their brains work the way they do, so they can repeat that. So that's a really powerful strategy as well. And I think this is our last math strategy, is target 5th and 6th grade. And I would say that could be for ELA as well. Really look at the transition and what supports do 5th graders into 6th graders need in order to be successful academically and
instructionally, what do they need in order to be successful? It is a huge shift. I know we're this tiny building and it feels like it can't possibly be a big shift, but it is. It's a different expectation in the middle school. So we have to stabilize that performance and figure out what they need in order to be successful there. And then our MTSS program, our monthly tiered system of supports, we've really done a lot with that. Ms. Kozlowski has worked very hard on that. And that is really starting to drive some of our conversations and allow some individual goal setting and individual goal setting, like to follow that goal setting and gather data around those goals. So we'll be using our MTSS system to support students in that area. Oh, I did have another math one. So closing these gaps is more than, like I was saying, more than isolated interventions. It's going to require embedding equity-centered instruction within the classroom in all spaces. So we need to, and this kind of comes from our Portrait of the Graduate. So New York State has put out something called Portrait of the Graduate, and it is essentially what is going to replace Regents. It is how we're going to think about graduate, and then we're going to figure out how students graduate using this rubric type thing. So they put out kind of an idea of what it is, and a lot of it has to do with this critical thinking. Portrait of Graduate is students who are critical thinkers, and we need to start to embed that into our lessons and into our daily instruction to support them with, yes, the tests, but more importantly, their thinking, problem solving, and their success as students. And this is just the rest of the Portrait of the Graduate. I just wanted to kind of flash it at you because you're going to see it a lot more. It's going to be coming your way a lot because we will have to begin to think about how it trickles down into, they're doing a lot with it in high school right now because as Regents, maybe might fade away, this is going to replace it. So these are kind of the pieces of the Portrait of the Graduate. So they're looking at students showing that they're critical thinkers, showing that they're effective communicators, how they are resilient learners. I think that's really an important one because our students are, especially when you think about our students who are, we're just looking at those gaps, those are some of the most resilient kids I know. Right? They are, in real life, they're really resilient. How do we get them to use that resiliency in their learning? That's an important piece for us to use. Civic and global citizenship and collaborative contributors. So we're going to use some of these Portrait of the Graduate pieces to really look at our programming and look at our instruction to see how they can support these students who need to accelerate forward. I'm going to pause because this is going to be about the accelerated classes and it's just like 2 slides real quick. Any questions on the demographics for ELA and math?
I have a couple. One is just a clarification. When you're talking about special ed students, we're not talking about self-contained.
No, because they would not take, right, it's kids would take the test. And we might have, every once in a while, we have a kid that is eligible to take a test, but for the most part, yeah, right?
Yeah, just Jen and I have had that conversation before. I just wanted to make sure the rest of the board understood because that was, when we talk about special ed, I think that's where a lot of people think first. And you're talking about general ed kids who have different needs in the classroom. And then just the other thing, I know you're not at the point yet where we've like decided on all our solutions, but you're talking about playing catch up and still getting exposure to the regular daily content. So were we talking at all about, we do some summer programs, we do some after school stuff. Is some of this just, do we need more time with these kids? And is that even a possibility? I know it's hard, we're a small building. If you're talking about summer stuff, you're relying on teachers who are willing to work over the summer, especially when you look at middle school and there's like one of each thing, right? But is that one of the things we're talking about is just extra time in front of these kids to try and make up some of the content they might have missed?
Yeah, I mean, I think using this data for our Tiger Learning program, one of the things we talked about last summer is really rethinking our older kids program portion of that. I think we only went up to 5th grade this past summer. And to us, I think we had it open for some other grades, but we were getting very low numbers in those older grades. So we, at the end of the year, took that as a, like, hey, what do we need to do to reinvigorate interest in the program? It can't be school 2.0, right? It has to be something different, something interesting, something exciting, something they're going to learn from, but also, they're not going to just come for 6 more weeks of what they've been doing. And in their defense, if that worked, we wouldn't be here, right? Like, we wouldn't be here. So why, we can't keep doing the same thing all summer, that wouldn't really make sense. But I think, yes, using this data to determine who comes in the summer is a great starting point, absolutely.
And maybe start engaging parents if you want to, especially target middle schoolers, start engaging parents early, like, hey, this is, something we're really trying to push this year, and we think it could really help your students. I think that'll help too, because the kids don't want to come. Like, it's summer school, right? That sucks, right? But like, if we can explain to families why it's important and how it's gonna help your school year when you come back, and I think that'll hopefully help.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and, thinking about our after-school tutoring program, trying to beef that up. We've done a couple iterations of it. Sherry and I worked hard on it, and Jen and I have had a lot of conversations around it, and that after-school program could be also something that could support them. A lot of times that becomes, I didn't do my homework and now I'm gonna go do my homework there, which is okay. But if we're talking about skill building, that doesn't happen when you're just kind of trying to make up homework to not fail class. Like, we want the skills to actually be improved. So summer might be a good time for that.
And that's hard too. It's a delicate balance. Like, for the kids that are already struggling during the school day, asking to stay for an extra hour or two is hard too, right?
Yeah.
They're tired, they're burnt out, they're already having a hard time in the school day. I get that too. So just extra hours isn't always the solution either, but. Yes. Does anyone else have any questions about the earlier presentation?
Yeah, just more or less. First, I want to say thank you for this. This is, great information, great data that I think we as a community all need to know and to hear. My question was, I'm just trying to find this slide, is, with our growth, more or less in our students with disabilities who are kind of stagnant in our Black population, with their growth, what are we saying? What do we think is the contributing factor of that? Like, what was the growth? Like, what contributed to that growth, and how can we implement that to keep it going, essentially?
Like you're saying, our ELA data showed
Yes.
Significant growth for our Black population.
Yes.
But our students with disabilities did not.
Yeah.
I have theories. I think this data, we need to kind of unpack some of this, and I really think one of the things we have to do is talk to kids. As kids, talk to kids about what they're experiencing in class. How is class for you? What are you learning? Are you engaged? Are you, I think that's some of it. I do think our growth in that area for ELA has been very intentional, and our teachers have done a lot of work around culturally responsive teaching, and specifically with literacy in mind. So I think, though, that is the work of our teachers in the classroom. Not that they weren't working at math, but I think our brains collectively wrapped around ELA a little bit better, because it is really, you want to get kids involved in reading, show them more of, themselves and the environment they're around, and just our kids in general. And, when I'll tell you an example, I don't know if you saw the bulletin board by the main office. It's a Ramadan bulletin board. Every kid that walked by it came into the office and wanted to talk to me about it, and was so excited that there was a Ramadan bulletin board. And then they started to bring me like materials from home to talk about and to read. And so it's just like you see a little bit of yourself, and you see that people are interested in who you are and what you're about. And then all of a sudden it's engaging. When you're engaged, you're listening. When you're engaged, you're talking. When you're engaged, you're writing. Now that engagement causes critical thinking and learning. I don't know that is transferred to math.
It's harder to do in math.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think the acceleration happens in the classroom when you're able to engage kids in all those things, at least in part.
Yeah.
Now that engagement and that interest turns into conversation, which turns into writing, which turns into, so I think we've done a lot of work around that. A lot of our books have become very engaging. The kids are interested in them. So I think that's a piece of it. Can I say, am I gonna, put my paycheck on it? Not yet, but I think that's a definite piece of it. And math, as you said, is a little harder.
I would add, one of the pieces too in the area of literacy. So we brought on our new curriculum, but I would say for the last 4 years or so, our primary teachers have been working really hard to shift instruction. So, our kids, when they come out of kindergarten, first and second grade, so many of them can decode text at grade level now. So like that's step one of reading, right? So like they're coming out of second grade, much better decoders. They can read more fluently. So when they enter third, fourth, and fifth grade and where the comprehension piece starts to kick in, like I think, take better decoding and more literacy skills in that area, add that with a knowledge building curriculum, and I think we start to see a recipe for success. When we met with our math committee, I think if you asked any one of our K2 teachers, our previous math curriculum was missing it in K2. It was not hitting the mark. So again, my hope is that, they took a lot of time to look at new math curriculums and updated pacing. I think about in kindergarten, in our old curriculum, I think they were still working on like number 14 at this point in the year, right? Like our kindergartners aren't looking at the number 14 anymore. Like they're adding and subtracting right now. So, I think you start to do some of that and hopefully it starts to build and improve as we go, as we start to go into the higher grade levels. While we brought out a new curriculum, I would say the literacy work started a little bit sooner in K2. And I think, we have some ground to make up in math. So I think, it's going to be a little bit at a time, but, I think our kids and our families and our teachers are committed. So hopefully we're going to start to see some of that adjustment as well.
And one of the big differences in our new math program is that there's a fluency component, and that was missing. And fluency basically is just, it's practice of number sense and number skills. So kids will spend the first 5 minutes just doing, 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves. So they'll kind of just count by halves, count by fractions, count by wholes, and they do it as a whole class. It is not meant to be a teaching moment. It is students to practice number sets. So in kindergarten, they would be counting by 2s, 2, 4, 6, and it's that number sense. And then I've seen the kindergarten teachers say 2, 4, 6, what if I go back to? And then they got it all at the same time. They're like poorly trying to go back to. So that type of fluency is going to serve them well when they get into older math grades and they've got to do that stuff very quickly in order to problem solve. Anything else?
Yeah, sorry,
Please.
I got a couple quick.
Okay.
So one, and kind of piggyback off of Patrick, you guys do a great job with these presentations. For the ELA, I just want to make sure that I'm saying this right with the graph that shows from grade 3 to 5, 60.5, it's slide 11, 60.5 proficient, and then 6 to 8 is 42.4. Is it right to look at that there are more that we need to push from level 1 to 2 to 3 and 4 in the 6 to 8 as opposed to 3 and 5, where it looks like there's not as many to push from that 1 to 2? It's kind of closing that 2 to 3, 4 gap.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Is it possible to get that same type of graph for the math?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I can send it to you.
So my brain works that way.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And then the third question, you talked about curriculum. I got a two-parter. I'll be quick about it. So one, when you talked about the ELA to math difficulty in relating the content, have you seen any curriculum going that route in math?
I think this curriculum is, the goal is to engage the students in conversation and in hands-on manipulation of math. So they are actually touching it and engaging in it and manipulating things. The teachers have all these different counters and manipulatives where rather than, paper and pencil all the time. Yes, there's paper and pencil component,
Sure.
But I think the way to meet those diverse learners is through a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue. You'll hear a lot in the math room now with teachers saying, you got that number, how do you know that? What told you that's the right answer? What did your brain do to come to that answer? So we always had to show our work, right? We had to show our work, but we could show our work in numbers. Now we're asking kids to communicate what they understand and know about math. And I think that communication is what is going to allow teachers to really unpack what kids know and don't know, and really get to the root of where the support is needed, where the scaffold is needed. And then I think the manipulative hands-on stuff engages kids. They work in groups. I was in first grade today. They had a bunch of pigs on a farm and they had to organize the pigs into groups of, 6s, and then she'd yell at a different pair and you had to get them into another. So it's very hands-on and the kids are engaged. And, you know, who doesn't want to squirt pigs, right? Like, that's great. So that seems to be engaging them a lot more. So I think that's our diverse learner piece we're looking at that's different.
Cool. And then the last part about curriculum, you mentioned that you have had to change curriculums. When you change a curriculum compared to these numbers, are you keeping that curriculum for a little while to see if there is a difference in numbers? Or this, for example, I think it was like the 23 to 25 in the math. Is that based on a 2-year span of the same curriculum being used, or was there 2 to maybe 3 curriculums used within that 2-year period?
No, so our new math program is this year, so our numbers in the spring will tell us about year 1 of that program.
Yeah.
So the math is entirely our old program, which was in Visions, correct?
2012, we adopted it.
Yeah, 2012, all the way until last year.
Oh, okay.
ELA, we started not this school year, the year before. So then when we look at 2023 to now, to last year, we are looking at 2 different curriculums, not 3, 2 different curriculums. So there was kind of, teachers were writing curriculum before that, and now we adopted for last year. So we had 1 full year of implementation. So those scores were based on 1 full year of implementation.
And it sounds like 2 curriculums in a 15-year
Yes.
times.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha, cool.
And we anticipate, you know, our core should be here, you know, for quite a while. We don't anticipate any changes. Same thing with our math. We, you know, you got to see kind of through, you got to see
Yeah,
some
yeah.
big cycles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
First. All right, so just real quick, our accelerated programs, I just want to give you some numbers. It's nothing too crazy, but this is our earth science and algebra. I'm just giving you participation. 18 out of 26 graduates last year participated, which is, you know, a pretty significant number. And you'll see, I think it's on another slide, that when we look back at our data, remember that equity slide with all the different subgroups? We have every subgroup represented in our in our earth science and algebra. And I would say the same this year. We have ELs, we have students with disabilities, we have every racial, demographic, and, you know, socioeconomic demographic. So that our representation is pretty good in our accelerated programs. And a lot of our students participated last year. And then the next one is our Spanish 2. 15 out of 26 kids participated in Spanish 2 last year. And again, a wide range of students.
Is this just 1 grade? Is this just 8th grade?
Just 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't do the
We started in
7th grade. We
grade,
did
yeah.
start the 7th grade. I can get you that data.
Okay.
Yep, so we have all racial demographics represented. Our special education is represented in L representation in our advanced programs. So we're looking to have this high academic rigor. Our students are doing well in the programs. When we look at our region scores, we have a high success rate for our region scores. And we're making sure that we're very inclusive. We want an open policy for our earth science and algebra. Spanish 2 is a little different. You have to pass the Spanish 1 Regents and get a certain score on it in order to do Spanish 2. So that's just the nature of that high school course. For algebra and earth science, we have an open policy. Parents will meet with us as long as they're game for, you know, what the program is, the accelerated nature of it and the fast-paced nature of it, then we're good to have anyone aboard. So that's what we're looking to do, is high expectations with accessibility, rigorous accelerated programs, so our students of all demographics, all students are succeeding in these programs. I think that's it, right, Trish? All right. Questions? No? Good.
Thank you, Mrs. Wiley.
Thank you.
Is that all you had for superintendent's reports? Okay. Item 4, business matters, non-action items. A, we have the warrants. Enclosed for the information of the board are copies of the following warrants and claims auditor report for January 20th, 2026. Few warrants there. Were there any questions? Right, item B, non-action items, budget transfers under $10,000. Any questions there on those transfers? Non-action items, appropriation status report. Any questions on that? Item D, non-action items, legal notice. It's for the town of Colony. Oh, this is their hearing for the.
You said D or E?
Oh, sorry, did I skip
I
one?
think you missed
Yeah.
D.
Sorry, I skipped the revenue status report, item D. Any questions on the revenue status report? Okay, legal notice. Is this our budget vote? Legal
Yep.
notice?
We have to
Okay.
publish it 4 times.
Yes, 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 thank you. Okay, yes, this is the notice for our election. Or you had told me that in pre-board and I didn't actually open it up and look. Does this also get posted on our website? Or do we just have to like? Yeah, okay. All right, any questions on that?
No.
All right, item 5, action items, treasurer's report. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District approve the treasurer's report for February 2026.
Second.
Any questions on it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, budget transfers over $10,000. Could I get a resolution, please?
Yep. Be it resolved that the authorization of the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District approve the enclosed budget transfers over 10,000.
Second.
Sorry. Okay, this is just to cover tuitions. It's like, all right, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, action items, bus contract extension. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the extension of the transportation contract between the district and Durham School Services for the 2026-2027 school year, subject to the approval of the New York State Commissioner of Education, and authorizes the board president to execute that agreement.
Second.
Any questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, the bus contract extension for Star and Strand. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the extension of the transportation contract between the district and Star and Strand Transportation Incorporated for the 26-27 school year, subject to the approval of the New York State Commissioner of Education, and authorizes the board president to execute the agreement.
Second?
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, contracts for approval. This various contracts. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District hereby approves the following contracts A through E as listed.
Second.
Any questions on any of the contracts listed below? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 6, Board of Education action items. A, the school calendar for 2026-2027. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District adopt the 2026-2027 school calendar as submitted.
Second.
Are there any questions on this? This is pretty similar to the calendar this year. There are a couple of holidays that fall on superintendent's days. Other than that, all the holidays that were observed this year would be observed next year. Any other comments about that?
No, we continue to build a calendar that supports the needs of our families. And we try to, strategically do that through days off, but also use our superintendent's conference days.
Any questions about it?
I just
Okay.
see on the calendar, just June 19th, is not blocked off, but you have June 18th blocked off.
So we are required to give the Friday before for a federal holiday, right? Is that the?
It was showing up as a Monday.
It's,
So, you know
so
what?
Saturday, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Then it's right. Put a Sunday.
Next year is a Saturday.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
And those are typically determined by Region 6 exams.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see. Oh, this. Oh, yeah, it doesn't look like there is an observed day off for it.
So
It's listed as a
It's on
holiday.
Saturday, yeah,
It
it's
is.
a holiday, but that's the weekend. Yeah, okay. All right, any other questions?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, memorandum of agreement. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Finance Union Free School District Board does hereby approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the district and the Finance Teachers Association for a successor agreement dated July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2027. And be it further resolved that the board hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute the memorandum of agreement, a copy of which shall be on file with the district clerk.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, memorandum of agreement, psychologist. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District does hereby approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the district and the Manans Teachers Association for a successor agreement dated July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2027. And be it further resolved that the board hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute the memorandum of agreement, a copy of which shall be on file with the district clerk.
Second?
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And I lost my place. All right, item 7, policies. A, first reading of policies. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the Policy Committee, approve the first readings of the following policies, A through B, as listed.
Second.
Before we vote on these, I wanted to talk about them a little bit, because I wasn't able to be at the last policy committee meeting. Charlie, I know you were there. The admission of the non-resident students. We have talked about not offering non-resident students a tuition option, and that would just be a change to what we've done in the past. Did you guys talk about that in the meeting at all?
We did talk about it. So we are not changing that policy, right? I'm not speaking there. I mean, it still is, the policy is a policy that's now in the books, but
So most of the policy is in the books, so that, you know, if students move in, we'll leave early. And if it allows us to contract with other places, the real change that we had a lot of discussion around was accepting tuition for non-resident students. And the policy committee just wasn't sure. There was a lot of questions. So where we landed, it was that piece was not in the first policy that came before the board. And what we had talked about was either one, the board can direct us that they would like us to consider to go back and add the piece about tuitioning non-residents, or the board could direct us to bring together a committee to explore that option. But I think if the policy committee as a whole didn't know that they felt comfortable putting that recommendation forward to the board, and that discussion should probably happen here at the board level first.
that was way better than I could have done.
I'll say, so this is probably one that I should have been at the meeting at. I will say, I believe our old policy allowed, even though we were never taken up on it, I believe that our old policy allowed out-of-district residents to go to Manans if they wanted to pay tuition to go here. I know we've had that conversation with families before. Again, I don't think anyone's ever taken us up on it. But I think our previous policy had that in there. I think if we took it out, it would be a change. And I think I think my preference would be to either talk about it as a group or send it back to the policy committee to maybe take a closer look at the policy that had been on the books before. The policy that was on the books before was very, very old. It was like a PDF copy. I don't even think we had an electronic copy of it. But it was one that we had talked about in the last couple of years. We had families that asked about continuing to go to Manans even though they had moved out of district, and that was the policy that had been in effect.
We were under the assumption that that's not what it said.
And I think it did.
Okay.
I went back and looked at some emails that I had with a prior board president. And the previous policy did allow families to pay if they wanted their students to go here. So I think if we pass this, it would be a change from prior practice. So I guess I would ask the rest of the board, where would you be more comfortable? Would you want to talk about it now? Would you want it to go back to the policy committee? Would you want more review? I can pull the old policy and show it to you side by side for the new before we pass, or we could do a first reading and have the discussion in the meantime. I don't know if I'd want to do that though. Just having a first reading and then not bring it to the second, maybe it gets complicated. I don't know. Does anyone
We should pull it off.
pull it off, you think?
I mean, I think there's enough questions to not move that one through. I mean,
Yeah.
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 Okay, I agree. I think I'd be more comfortable pulling it off. If the policy committee thought that wasn't it before, maybe I'll send an email to the policy committee just saying, hey, this came up at the board meeting, sorry, I was not the last one. Here's what our prior policy said. Here's the new one. What do we want to do?
yeah.
But we already read the resolution, so I don't know exactly how that goes. So let's just vote separately on A and B. Or should we pull it off? We've never done this before. I don't know how that works.
You can just pull it off. So you could reread the resolution with B redacted and all of them, but you redacted.
A redacted.
A redacted.
So-
So B is listed because we're taking A off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
B, I'll just read a little.
All right. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the Policy Committee, approve the first readings of the following policies, B as listed.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see if the current one was on there.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add is that I will, prior to the policy meeting, I will reach out to the attorneys. So, there's rates that are set for tuition. And I would specifically ask questions around students with disabilities. Because our rates for students with or without disabilities are significantly different. And I don't know what that looks like if you're charging tuition to a family. Like, for instance, if a child goes to St. Pius, then it's a private school, not a public school. The tuition is the tuition, and the home district pays for the special education services.
Hmm.
I don't know how that works in a public school setting, so I think that there's probably a lot of questions to ask that have changed since the original policy was in place.
Yep.
So, I'll see what I can gather for information prior to.
And there were stipulations in the policy that, you had to be able to do it with your existing staff, with your existing transportation. It was at the discretion of the superintendent. So I would say if you're looking at having Manans, you don't live in district, but you want Manans to pay your tuition to send the kids somewhere else, that wouldn't fall under the policy, but it'd be good to ask legal.
Well, I guess I just meant like, say a Watervliet student comes to Manans, but requires special education services, like who pays for that child's? I don't know that we can bill the family for their child's special education services. That's all.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? I just, that we'll get the information.
Yeah.
Just so that the policy committee has the information as a whole,
Right.
and then we know how to move forward in a way that works for students.
Okay, all right, so we'll reach out to legal. If everyone has a chance, it looks like the old policy is on there, the current 5152. Just take a look at what the old one looks like, what the new proposed one looks like, and we'll reach out to legal and bring it back to the policy committee. Okay, item B, final reading of policies. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Manatee Union Free School District upon the recommendation of the Policy Committee, approve the final readings of the following policy as listed.
Second.
Any questions about that one? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Personnel matters, personnel agenda. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Menands Union Free School District approves the updated personal agenda items as attached.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have someone here?
Yes, so we have Mrs. Tour here. She is going to begin with us after April break as our new occupational therapist. She comes to us from the City School District of Troy, where she currently serves students across grades K through 12. She has spent some time in private educational settings in the private sector, started her career in public education, returned to public education, and we are excited to bring her on here at Manans School. So welcome.
Great, welcome.
Welcome.
I know it has been a little bit of a lengthy meeting. You are more than welcome to join us for the remainder of the meeting. And we also fully support and understand if you decide to go home to your family because you have to work again tomorrow in the morning. So thank you.
So much.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Okay, item B, letter of resignation. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District accept the letter of resignation effective close of business March 6, 2026 for Daniel Carroll.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, so Mr. Carroll came to us at the end of last week. He has had some changes within his life that has required him to step away from a daily position with us in the cafeteria. Mr. Danny, he spends, I think he spent the last 7 or 8 years with our kids in the cafeteria. His specialty is cutting apples and pizza for the little ones and some ice cream treats in the warmer months when they are doing as he asks within the cafeteria. So Danny, he's a village resident. He spent a lot of time with us. We are certainly sorry to see him leave us on a daily basis. We did ask him to please consider coming back and subbing, or even just coming by to visit. So we'll work to fill the position in the cafeteria, but we will certainly stay connected with Danny, and we appreciate the years of the time that he has given to our students.
The kids will miss him.
Yes.
Item 9, superintendent program recommendations, AACSE, CPSE recommendations. Could I get a resolution, please?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District hereby approves the CSE, CPSE recommendations as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, substitute teachers fully cleared.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Manans Union Free School District approve the substitute teachers as listed for the 25-26 school year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, student matters, enrollment update at 300. And changing. How's our pre-K list looking for next year?
I think I'm up to 14 for pre-K and still like 12 for kindergarten.
Oh, that's
None of
great.
those 12 are any of our pre-K
Did you say none of them are? Maybe they don't realize.
students. I ate on them. So it's been very busy. But
Yeah.
And we'll flip to 2 sections of kindergarten.
Yeah.
Right. Apparently, we're
And there it is.
looking at 2 sections. Okay, principals' comments. 11, administrative updates, principals' comments.
I will, I just want to add one caveat from my first presentation before we get into this month. Ms. Witkowski and I were just chatting in between, and I will say with regards to our data for students with disabilities, our data is the same as, it's just the same state data. Doesn't mean we want our students stagnant. It just means that it is reflective of where the state is. In fact, the state might be a little lower, more like 16 to 18%. Our RIC data, which is our Capital Region BOCES, is right at like 24%. So we're where others are, not our goal though. So. Okay, so welcome to the team. Staff say our little calendar, trying to pretend our picture's not up here, but he's up here. Welcome to Sarah and Amanda. We've been the first month here, so great to have our new additions. Our third grade is writing with students in Kenya. So they have some pen pals going on, and they wanted to share their, they able to get on and see them and talk to them and share with, conversation with them, but they're also writing to them. So there's this great relationship going on with our third grade students. So they're, look at them, they're so cute. All right, sorry, Trish. Our author celebration, so in third through fifth grade, they're doing informational research projects through our core program. So they created these presentations around all types of animals and insects and a variety of different living things, I believe. And we had our parents in for the author celebration. So the students wrote stories and presented them in the cafeteria. We had a boatload of parents here. Thank you to everyone who came. And the kids take a lot of pride in it. They spend a lot of time working on those stories. That it really is evidence of the rigor of this program, our literacy program. They are reading and writing a ton and presenting and communicating. When we think about that portrait of a graduate, here's all those pieces coming together in one spot. Had our 100th day of school. So we had some celebrations. We had some PJ parties, and I know 101, we had some Dalmatians. I don't think I got any pictures of those, but we had some classroom parties for 100th day. I couldn't believe it came and went. It was like all of a sudden, where did the year go? PTA paint night. So they we had a fun time, again, a packed house for PTA paint night. They did a really great picture. Mr. Godson does a great job. He really does a nice job picking out something that all kids and families can do and then leading the event. So thank you to PTA supplying the snacks and, all the things needed. And I think Tammy ran that, right? Yeah. So thank you to Snack Mara. More successful paints, that's okay. So we've been seeing a lot this year of more and more over the years of students collaborating grade to grade, which is really great to see our students, taking advantage of that K-8 environment and really getting our kids to, visit each other. So this is the second grade went in with first graders. I know not that much of an age difference, but they spent time sharing their stories with each other. Not looking for anything. Oh, it's a manager. That is our
My
manager. She's trying to say something.
Probably.
That's very. So you'll see that theme. So there's just a lot of collaborating and communicating and sharing with the classrooms they're learning. So another way for us to get kids communicating. We'll go quick, right, Trish? Yeah. Tell Amanda, knock it off. Just because she was on the screen, she thinks she don't know. More first and second grade sharing about their learning in our course. We celebrated Lunar New Year and had the Asian Arts of New York come in and do a presentation. They taught about what Lunar New Year is. They talked about the symbols and the tradition and what happens during that time period. It was, they did some music and some dancing, and they had I think the next slide is the dragon things. They even let me play with it. The kids enjoyed this a lot, watching them run around. This would get like almost up in the kids' face and they enjoyed that. And it was, you know, they had some interactive stuff, questions and answers and learning about, Japanese culture and, just learning about what Lunar New Year is about. We're very proud of our ability to continue to add programming that really shows all the cultures that represent our community and the world. Not that. Nothing else to say. Nothing to help that. Feels like a very run. But, we had a great time. A couple, I think, Patrick, you came, right?
I did come, yeah. No, it was a good time. It's loud in the gym. Oh,
Right?
oh, it is
So
loud.
fun. We have a blast. The kids have so much fun. And we had a PE student teacher who really was helpful.
Yeah.
The kids have challenged us again, and he's not here anymore, so the answer is no.
Yeah.
We stand undefeated.
Yeah.
So it was great. Here's some good shots of them and the fans having a great time. You think the kids would get bored? They don't. They are engaged the whole time,
The whole time.
loving it. They make
From
signs,
start to
they're screaming
finish.
and yelling. If you don't have to come to a game, you need to make sure you come next year. It is worth the time that they love. The older kids are like they're heroes. They're so excited to cheer for them, and they cheer for us when they're disappointed in our way we play. Oh, my son came because he was supposed to referee, but then he decided he wanted to play against me, so he ended up in the game. And every time I stepped on the floor, he stepped on the floor. That was Mr. Buskey's plan. And he didn't allow me to get the ball most of the time, which was rude. Yeah, here he is. See, look at that.
I was gonna say.
And look at that. This guy right here, our referee. Halftime, my daughter came as well, and my daughter decided to help him referee because at halftime he asked, "Where is the out of bounds line again?" Halftime.
Oh, gosh.
PJ, which one is the? She goes, PJ, which line are we playing? He goes, what do you mean? She goes, which line is out of bounds? I don't know, which one do you want? What have you been doing for an entire half? Our Black History Month is just an amazing month in school. We enjoy it so much. We did a variety of things all week or all month. The students did the projects to get ready. We had our stop and moment where during the week we would stop. The whole building would stop in the middle of not an announcement thing. It was in the middle of a class. We stopped, and for 5 to 10 minutes, we reflect on an important figure of Black history, and then they spend time either singing or writing or drawing or dancing or reading, and the teacher gets to kind of pick. And our goal is to literally stop and spend time. You know, Black history is worth more than just an announcement and the loudspeaker when everyone's getting their books out. It's bigger than that. It's important. So we want to make sure that during the day we spend time thinking about that. So we did a lot. We had our spirit days, kids dressed up, so we had a great time there. And then we had our evening event. Can you go back one slide real quick, Trish? Sorry, we are going to go home tonight, guys. But one of the things the 8th graders wanted to do is they wanted to go into the younger grades and read books with either Black characters or Black authors. So our 8th graders took it upon themselves to take their free time, their lunch and their advisory to go into a variety of classrooms. Mr. Sessian helped set that up, and they read to all the grades. So that was something they wanted to do and Mr. Sessian wanted to do. And then this is our celebration. It was a great night. We started in the gym, had some singing and performances, and it was just amazing. Dustin's husband sang. Amazing. We had some authors, we had some performers, with students did some things this year, which we hadn't done in the past. So we keep adding, and then we do our A to Z. We had a name that tune over the loudspeaker. So that was fun too. I was one short, and parents literally came to the office door. I said, there's 7.
Yeah.
And I said, this is our last one. And it was 6, and they were banging down the door. I want my last song. Came in, she's like, they want your head. Do the last song.
Yeah.
They got it. So they had parents had a good time too. And that was my goal, was to involve the parents a little bit. And allow them to celebrate as well. Just more Black History Month photos. This was a big hit down here, Taj and his cobbler. Thank you to the barbers who came. They had a standing room only in order to get their hair cut. We had some Pope rocks in the painting in the library. Our fourth graders worked with Jordan Hill, who does African drumming and dance, and they taught the fourth grade how to do some dance and drumming. So they were performing. So it was a really great, inclusive, fun community event. And just the events coming up. Kindergarten information night is Wednesday. It's Wednesday. We have our progress reports coming out. Also on the 13th, we have that iftar is going to be an evening that we will be spending together as a community. It is open to 4th through 8th grade students and an adult. It is potluck style. We are going to break fast with the community as a whole. So we will be in the cafeteria and we will just eat and enjoy time together. So you're welcome to come to that. Our last day of the trimester is coming up already. We have Superintendent's Conference Day where we will be working on some math curriculum, and BOCES is coming as well. So we've got a lot going on there. Trimester 3 clubs are out already, right? Sign-ups are out, and the clubs will start on the 23rd. Drama Club is in full march. We are marching. So the kids have a lot of excitement and enthusiasm building around that. Our presentation. I think that's it. Am I missing one?
There's a PTA meeting tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, yes, yes. And Bobby did these slides. Aren't they so cute? She did a good job. She loves you. She loves you.
Okay, thank you. The administrative updates, B, superintendent's comments.
So, last week I attended the New York State Council of School Superintendents Winter Conference. They had a range of offerings, as they typically do, anything from policy to implications of AI to different programs that they're offering. So it was a good couple of days. It was right down here in Albany, down by the Capitol. They do some advocacy the second half of the second day, but by that time we've already met with Assemblyman Steck and Senator Ashby, so I typically return to district that day. But it was a great day. Myself, Dr. Stevens, Dr. Calfish over at Green Island, and Mrs. O'Shea, all four of us presented on the Riverside Collaborative. So we shared our experiences and the work that we've done to be able to work together to provide special education programming so that hopefully other districts and other BOCES can start to do some of the same work. Special education programming for students is difficult. It's even more difficult for smaller districts. So we had a good amount of people that came and listened and heard and are interested in doing something similar. So it's an opportunity for groups to share their expertise with us, and we were proud to share our expertise with them as well. So it was a great couple of days. And then the second piece is Kathleen had shared, we have our Superintendent's Conference Day a week from Friday. It is on Eid so that our families can celebrate, and then we still are here at school. We have some work going on with our math curriculum. We have some training coming in, a second part of that training for our teachers. We have BOCES coming to talk to our teachers about strategic planning and what their thoughts are, and to provide some feedback from our teachers about our next steps in our, in our goal areas and hear what they have to say. Our special education classrooms are going to look at literacy, particularly for students that are nonverbal. We have a group that are going to work with Mrs. Wiley around some of the pacing guide work and do some critical friend protocols and talk about strengths of, the pacing guides and next moves. So we have quite a bit planned that day, inclusive of a potluck lunch. Everybody usually brings a dish to share that day. One of the nicest parts of our superintendent's conference days are people get a chance to eat together, talk together, learn together. So while they tend to be a really busy day, they also are a nice day for our staff, that they get to be with each other and, develop some more connections and really get to spend some time together outside of the fast-pacedness of a typical school day. So we look forward to that.
Thank you. Item 12, miscellaneous. This is a chance for board members to talk about any community events or things going on in Manans or the greater area, or to ask any questions they have or suggest a topic for a future board meeting. Does anybody have anything? Item 13, public comment. During public comment sessions, members of the community may address board on agenda and non-agenda items. Bother the rest. So that's, I mean, nobody person listening, nobody online. Okay, again, if anybody ever wants to email comments, boecomments@manans.org. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. I will say that we will go into executive session. You are welcome to stay. We do not anticipate to take action once executive session is complete. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Could I get a motion to enter executive session?
I'll make a motion to enter executive session to discuss the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are in executive session. We can take a few minutes. I assume we'll go into